Stream now on the free CBS News app.
When it comes to the money you spend every day, we have you covered every morning. Making money makes sense. Weekdays on CBS Mornings.
After nearly 4 decades of March Madness, this sports broadcasting legend is stepping away from his role in covering the NCAA basketball tournament. Jim Nantz on his fondest memories and what's next when we go person to person.
This was a deliberate criminal act, a violation of those guidelines.
I'm concerned that it happened, but there's nothing contemporaneous that I'm aware of that is of great consequence.
But it has become painfully obvious to many of us in California that she is no longer able to fulfill her duties.
She deserves the respect to get well and be back on duty. I've never seen them go after a man who was sick in the Senate in that way.
So if that 20-week ban reached your desk, would you sign it?
20-week ban, definitely.
This was an unelected judge making this decision when the FDA has the ability and the right to determine what kinds of medications should be prescribed and what they're used for. And as a Republican and as a suburban mom and as a woman, I want us to show some compassion to women post-Roe.
Welcome to Red and Blue. I'm Nancy Cordes in Washington. It's been a very busy day here in Washington. Thank you so much for joining us. First off, a suspect has now been arrested in the leak of classified Pentagon documents that were posted on several social media sites. Here's the suspect. His name is Jack Teixeira, being detained outside his Massachusetts home. He is 21 years old. He's a member of the 102nd Intelligence Wing of the Massachusetts Air National Guard. For more on how they zeroed in on him, let's bring in CBS News intelligence and national security reporter Olivia Gazis and CBS News senior White House correspondent Weijia Jiang, who is joining us from Dublin, Ireland, where she's traveling with the president. Olivia, let's start with you. How did intelligence officials and the FBI track down this particular suspect?
Well, it happened rather quickly, a matter of days, once these documents moved into more public mainstream outlets from that small private server where they first appear to have been posted. Because what we're learning, based on accounts that were given to the Washington Post and other outlets by somebody who claims to know Jack Teixeira and to have been a member of this small Discord channel where they were first posted, he was doing this possibly as far back as October, and he was doing it in documents by the hundreds. At first, it sounds as though he may have been transcribing classified materials before then saying, that's too time-consuming, I'm going to upload digital images of these classified documents. But it wasn't because, according to the accounts of this person who knows him, he had a workplace gripe or he had some sort of opposition to the war in Ukraine. He was effectively a 21-year-old showing off to a peer group.
Look what I know. Look what I have access to.
That's what it looks like. We haven't heard from him directly about his motivation, but that's what it looks like according to the accounts of people who know him. It took one of these users to move these materials to a more public-facing server for Russian Telegram to notice, for the mainstream media to notice, and then for federal investigators to notice. And from there, they followed a very clear digital trail right back to Jack Teixeira, allegedly, because he was one of a very limited pool of suspects who had access to this highly classified information.
This 21-year-old allegedly had a pretty big impact. I mean, this caused shockwaves in Russia, in Ukraine, with some of our Asian allies. And the Attorney General, Merrick Garland, weighed in on the arrest today. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
FBI agents took Teixeira into custody earlier this afternoon without incident. He will have an initial appearance at the U.S. District Court for the District of Massachusetts. I want to thank the FBI, Justice Department prosecutors, and our colleagues at the Department of Defense for their diligent work on this case.
Olivia, what kinds of charges could he now be facing? And how did he have access to so much classified information in the first place if he really is a low-level 21-year-old member of the National Guard?
That was the immediate question for a lot of people, right, is what is a 21-year-old airman doing with access to some of the most coveted and highly protected sensitive information that this country has? Because, yes, we learned from the Pentagon that his role was a cyber transport systems journeyman, somebody who was for responsible for laying fiber optic cables, for example, in military bases to connect computer networks. So again, what is somebody in that kind of role doing with that kind of access to what appear to be briefing books for the chairman of the Joint Chiefs? It's not entirely clear yet. It's not entirely clear whether he was, in fact, authorized to view those documents or whether he was skirting guidelines, breaking rules in order to access them. You did hear the Pentagon today call it a deliberate criminal act, and you did hear them say that they are taking a really hard look at their distribution lists, at their rules for who can access highly classified materials. And you also heard them say that, hey, when you join the military and when you apply for a security clearance, you are expected to abide by these rules no matter what age you are.
The question of who was behind this leak has really consumed Washington for days. Weijia, you are in Ireland, but the president, who is traveling there right now, was asked about the case there. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
Mr. President, could you give an update on that leak investigation, the leaked documents from DOD?
I can't right now. There is a full-blown investigation going on, as you know, with the intelligence community and the Justice Department, and they're getting close. I don't have an answer.
How concerned are you about this leak?
Are you concerned about our relationship?
Are you concerned about the leak?
Okay, guys, it's time to go. Let's go. Cool, we got to move.
I'm not concerned about the leak because I'm concerned that it happened. But there's nothing contemporaneous that I'm aware of that is of great consequence.
So, Weijia, it's interesting that he kind of downplayed the leak right there when talking to reporters. What else did he have to say? What else does the White House have to say now that a suspect has been detained?
So when President Biden made those remarks early today, he also indicated that an arrest might be imminent because he said that they were zeroing in and getting closer. And then, as you pointed out, Nancy, he really said that he did not believe that the documents contained anything of great consequence, which, of course, we'll have to wait to see, what else we learn about exactly what was in those. But I think what's important here to think about is the broader implications, because here he is on a foreign trip celebrating the friendship between the U.S. and Ireland, an important ally. And now those allies are wondering whether they can trust the U.S. with sensitive information, because reportedly these documents included private assessments of various nations and their thoughts on the war in Ukraine, on how soon the country may be able to end it, if at all. These are big questions for the White House. And today, the White House press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, said that this did not come up when the president met with the Prime Minister of the UK yesterday. Now, what we don't know is whether he talked about it during his day of meetings here in Ireland with the president or the Prime Minister, but certainly, this is going to come up, especially the more that we learn about these documents. But I think the White House is trying to downplay it. The White House has said that they're not sure whether all of these documents were even legitimate, that some may be fabricated. So there are outstanding questions, Nancy, but certainly on the face of it, a lot of concerns, too.
A lot of concern, especially because of the sheer volume of intelligence material that we're talking about here. Yeah. Olivia Gazis here in Washington, Weijia Jiang in Dublin. Thank you both so much. Democrat Dianne Feinstein has asked to be temporarily replaced on the Senate Judiciary Committee. Her request comes as two of Senator Feinstein's Democratic colleagues call for her resignation. The 89-year-old has served in the Senate since 1992. She's been home in California since early March, recovering from shingles. CBS News congressional correspondent Scott MacFarlane joins us now. Scott, you have been talking to lawmakers there on Capitol Hill. How are they reacting to the news of the fact that she is now asking to step back from the Senate Judiciary Committee?
There are two major takeaways to that, Nancy. First of all, it's an indication she's not coming back soon. If there's got to be a placeholder or a fill-in to help unjam or unclog the Senate Judiciary Committee by getting the Democrats the majority they want back on that panel, likely she's going to be gone for quite some time. And her absence has already eclipsed 2 months as she recovers from shingles. That's the first issue. The second issue is a growing concern among Democrats here of what happens when they try to fill this seat. They can do so through unanimous consent if everybody agrees. But Republicans could put a hurdle there, knowing that this helps Democrats confirm judges. So the next step is far from clear. How easy a step this is going to be is far from clear. What's more, there are some fellow Democrats saying Dianne Feinstein should not be rushed out by her fellow Democrats. Ro Khanna of California says it's time for Senator Feinstein to step away. Here's what Nancy Pelosi, though, said about her fellow San Franciscan, Dianne Feinstein.
She deserves the respect to get well and be back on duty, and it's interesting to me. I've never seen them go after a man who was sick in the Senate in that way.
We already know the senator's not running for re-election next year, but Nancy, she also got an endorsement late today from John Garamendi, former state legislator, one of her colleagues from California, saying she should be given the time to come back.
Yep, and the reason that this is of such intense focus is because the Senate Judiciary Committee, on which she sits, is responsible for voting up or down all of the president's nominees for federal judgeships. And so there's basically been a massive stall in that process because she's not there. Democrats need every vote they can get. And, that is one of the biggest things that the Senate does these days, at least as far as Democrats are concerned, is get President Biden's picks confirmed. I want to ask you about another topic, though, jury selection, which began today in Dominion Voting Systems' defamation lawsuit against Fox News. You've been covering that so closely. What's the latest on that and on this new sanction that the judge imposed on Fox?
If they finish the jury selection tomorrow, if they do, Nancy, this trial will begin Monday morning in Wilmington, Delaware. $1.6 billion, a defamation suit from Dominion Voting Systems against Fox News. But there has already been drama before the trial begins. The judge there, Eric Davis, has sanctioned Fox's lawyers already, saying there may need to be more depositions, and if so, Fox will pay for them because the judge says Fox didn't turn over all the things they were supposed to turn over before the trial. He also might order a special master, there's that term again, to oversee Fox's production of documents. A special master could conceivably also issue punishment against the lawyers. This is all the opening chapter of a trial that will consume weeks.
Fascinating that there's even more material that we haven't seen, given all the texts that we've already been able to see between Fox News anchors and executives. I know you'll be watching closely. Scott McFarland, thank you. Up next, my conversation with South Carolina Republican Congresswoman Nancy Mace about why she's warning her party that the issue of abortion could hurt them in 2024. You're streaming Red and Blue, reporting across the political divide.
Hey there, welcome to The Uplift. I thought she was a groom, and I stepped back and I went, oh, you're the queen. She's going to be with me every instant that I'm alive.
I just wanted to see if you'd go to Disneyland with me today. I look over at him and he's smiling.
I'm going to remember that the rest of my life.
They told us when he was going to be born, he was only going to live for 30 minutes. It's really a miracle that he's with us today.
The Uplift. Stream now on the free CBS News app.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
On our places, bright, shiny faces.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my two good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings.
An original documentary from CBS reports.
I always tell people that Twitter would not be Twitter without Black Twitter. It's just us being in fellowship with each other.
And it becomes a conversation you don't want to be left out of.
People really started to recognize the power of activism on Twitter.
Based on that one tweet, the hashtag #OscarSoWhite was trending around the world.
If anything has really powered Black Twitter, it's been humor.
If your food ain't right, oh, we're gonna tell you about that too.
So we tend to create change, create culture and cool.
That's how movements happen on Black Twitter and go beyond more than that.
Black Twitter, the Twitterverse that changed a generation. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
You ready? A generation of kids opens up on CBS Reports.
I just want to be like a regular kid.
Their world, their struggles, their voices.
What if I was white?
A lot of people like to call names and make you feel ashamed for being proud of who you are.
Now streaming Gender.
I did not realize that you could change your gender.
Realizing how you feel.
You can be a boy, sometimes you feel like a girl, sometimes you feel like both.
Redefining who you are.
Identify as trans.
Gender fluid.
Non-binary and queer.
Is the idea of gender a thing of the past?
And to be yourself, always, no matter what anyone says, I love you.
Are the kids all right? Gender. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Stories that inform.
You can be really old at 60, and you can be really young at 85.
Inspire.
How do we unlock the power within ourselves to be who we want to be?
And brighten your day.
The best part of fame is making people feel good. Always send the people home happy.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
The news doesn't have to always be depressing.
What do you love about running?
It can be uplifting. That human connection that we create on the broadcast every night is incredibly important.
Welcome back to Red and Blue. The Justice Department says it will ask the Supreme Court to pause an appeals court decision that keeps access to a commonly used abortion pill but imposes some restrictions that will make the medicine harder to get. While the drug mifepristone will remain available, it can no longer be sent through the mail and is only approved for use for up to 7 weeks of pregnancy instead of the previous 10 weeks. This all comes after a federal judge sought to reverse the FDA's approval of the drug last week, leading to some backlash from both Democrat and Republican lawmakers. Earlier, I spoke with Republican South Carolina Congresswoman Nancy Mace. Joining me now is South Carolina Congresswoman Nancy Mace, a Republican. Congresswoman Mace, let me just start out by asking you what your reaction is to this new appeals court ruling.
Well, it's certainly better than keeping it off the shelves, but they limited it to 7 weeks rather than 10, which was the way that it was previously. I want to caution everybody on this particular issue. There were two rulings, opposite rulings, and this took a medication off the shelves for women who are suffering from miscarriages and want to avoid having surgery. This medication has been used in the past for cancer treatments and other diseases and illnesses like Cushing's disease. We got to be very thoughtful about how we're taking care of women in this country. And this was an unelected judge making this decision when the FDA has the ability and the right to determine what kinds of medications should be prescribed and what they're used for, not an unelected judge. I think that's important here. And as a Republican and as a suburban mom and as a woman, I want us to show some compassion to women post-Roe.
Congresswoman, there are a lot of conservatives who are celebrating today. They say this ruling is the kind of thing that they've been working towards for decades. You don't seem to be celebrating. Why is that?
I'm not, and I'm pro-life, and I have a great pro-life voting record. But there's a big difference between, I think, myself and some others who have taken this issue to the extreme. I represent a part of South Carolina. Just a few weeks ago, there were 21 state lawmakers that filed a bill. Not only did they draft it, but filed a bill that would execute women who have abortions. There's another state out there talking about their state legislature banning women from traveling outside of the state. And, these policies are insane, they're crazy, and they don't take into account, in particular, this particular pill and other ways that it might be used, especially for women who are suffering from miscarriages and want to avoid having to have surgery because of their miscarriage. And what do we say to those women? Good luck. We hope you don't get sepsis. This isn't the message that our party really should be reverberating around the country right now. Women don't get it.
And yet we're watching the Florida legislature debate today a new bill that would restrict abortions to just the first 6 weeks when many women still don't even know that they're pregnant. And the governor has said that he wants to sign that into law. Do you think that that's a mistake?
Well, particularly at 6 weeks, and with regard to the Florida legislation, and you're right, a lot of women don't know they're pregnant by then, but with regard to that particular piece of legislation, the poison pill there is that they are going to mandate women report their rapes to police in order to qualify for an abortion. That's wrong. That's a non-starter.
I was raped at the age of 16. I got to tell you, if I had to report it and go through that with the police, I don't know that I would be here today. That was a traumatic experience for me. It was a horrifying experience. And to mandate that women have to report it in that kind of manner when they're not ready to do that is wrong. And then they're going to miss that window with the exceptions. And in Florida, you have to have multiple appointments with doctors before you can have an abortion. You have to have 2. You're going to be out of that 6-week window no matter what.
We spoke to your South Carolina colleague, Tim Scott, on this program yesterday, and he takes a very different view. In fact, he wouldn't commit to backing the 15-week abortion ban that is being proposed by your other state senator, Lindsey Graham. Senator Scott has now said that he'll back a 20-week ban. Where do you stand when it comes to that particular question of a federal ban on abortion?
Right. And both of our U.S. senators have supported either 15 to 20-week bans with exceptions for rape and incest in the past. I believe that some sort of gestational limit is fine. You've got Democrats on one side that want up to 24 weeks. You have Republicans on the other side. They're anywhere from 12 to 15 to 20 weeks. 15 to 20 weeks is somewhere in the middle there. I'm in a purple district, and it's unlike many Republican districts in the country. The number 2 issue here is abortion after inflation. And I talk to people all across the aisle. I talked to a woman the other day who considers herself pro-choice. She left the Republican Party over this issue. She's an independent now, and her gestational limit time frame is 14 weeks. Here I am as a pro-life Republican, and I'm saying 15 to 20 weeks should be fine for most of America. And so I think the way that we talk about it matters, whether you're pro-life or pro-choice. There's about 90% in the middle where we all can find some agreement, including on gestational timeframes and limits.
You've talked about the medical concerns here, the moral concerns. What about the electoral concerns? What do you think that some of these very restrictive court decisions and bills that are being passed by state legislatures will mean for your party when it comes to re-election in 2024?
It's going to mean more losses. And I don't believe that my party has learned anything from 2022 from the midterms. We saw this issue rear its head after Roe was overturned. I was one of the few Republicans that was doing national media talking about a need to find and build consensus. I've written multiple op-eds. I've done multiple interviews on the issue. I'm in a bellwether district, and I see the pulse of everyday Americans on both sides of the aisle, men and women alike, and they are not with us. They're not with the extreme far-right crazy nut jobs that want to take this, that want to go to these extreme places. I mean, there are people out there advocating for women not to have access to birth control. Like, what the hell are you talking about? Do you want to lose every race or just a few races? It's really baffling to me that this is where we are in our country today. And I think you can find a way to balance the right to life with women's rights. And it's just finding that middle ground, putting exceptions in for rape, incest, life of the mother, and fetal abnormalities, looking at those exceptions, finding reasonable gestational limits, and being compassionate, because we can't win hearts and minds when we're this ugly to other people, and particularly to victims of rape. I can't tell you how many times I've come out and talked about my story and why I take the positions I take, then to only get attacked as a victim of rape, about being raped, from the far right. And it's wrong. And women are not going to vote for us if this is the stance that we're going to take. We're going to continue to lose lots of races. You can be conservative and find solutions where most people can agree with you. But if we don't do that, we're going to suffer some major losses in 24. It's going to be a bloodbath. I believe it's going to be a dogfight. And I don't think we know what's coming.
Well, we don't also know what's coming at the Supreme Court, which is where this case is now headed. So we'll be watching that. Congresswoman Nancy Mace of South Carolina, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
The National Rifle Association begins its annual convention in Indianapolis tomorrow with a number of 2024 Republican presidential contenders set to speak. We'll go there to check in with our own Robert Costa next. You're streaming Red and Blue.
An original documentary from CBS Reports. Controversial Congressman George Santos.
Why won't you answer our questions?
How did he manage to get elected?
Thank you very much, and God bless you, and God bless the USA.
George Santos' campaign was a campaign of deceit, lies, fabrication.
And who is he, really?
I knew him as Anthony DeVolder from Queens.
Really, who he is, he's a fraud.
I compare him to the Tinder swindler.
From people who know him, the truth, the facts, the lies.
He would say that he was worth $100 million.
It's an incredibly cynical episode in American politics, beyond satire.
Had you ever seen anything like this?
No, and I hope I never see it again.
Campaign of Deceit, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
She dazzled on the court and off the court as a businesswoman.
Thank you for joining us on Person to Person. Tennis superstar and entrepreneur Serena Williams.
An original CBS Reports documentary.
I asked my students, what are we going to do about racism in the United States?
The backlash over teaching about racism in American schools.
I don't think it has any place in the classroom.
We can either pretend and say, no, we're not racist and we're all great people, or we can actually start to do the really, really hard work of addressing it.
How did you lose your job?
I made the statement that white privilege is a fact.
Is it helping diversity and inclusion?
When you bring in different people's stories and experience, it enriches education.
If you don't talk about something, it doesn't go away.
Or driving us further apart?
What schools are doing to our children in the name of anti-racism is in fact teaching them racism.
The intention is to put us in this war against each other.
An original CBS Reports documentary, streaming now. An original CBS Reports documentary.
I was entitled to equal pay for equal work under the law.
Does the Supreme Court's power need to be checked?
9 Supreme Court justices, 5 of them said no, she's not entitled. That's not right.
Calls to fix the court tend to go along with the politics of the moment.
Republican-appointed justices have all tended to go in one direction, with the Democratic-appointed justices tending to go in another.
Even though it's only 9 justices, it takes 5 of them to make the law of the land.
Does it have political impact? True. Political intent? Probably not true.
If the American people don't trust the judgments of their court, that's a real problem for our democracy.
An original CBS Reports documentary, streaming now.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings.
Welcome back to Red and Blue. The NRA's annual convention begins tomorrow in Indianapolis with a number of 2024 Republican presidential candidates and possible contenders slated to give remarks. Former President Trump, former Vice President Pence, New Hampshire Governor Chris Sununu, and former Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson are all among the notable in-person speakers, while Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley, and South Carolina Senator Tim Scott will all be delivering pre-recorded video messages. For more on all of this, CBS News chief election and campaign correspondent Robert Costa joins us now from Indianapolis. Robert, this convention is coming right on the heels of 2 high-profile mass shootings, one in Nashville, one in Louisville. What's the political temperature like there in the run-up to this convention?
Nancy, it's good to be with you from here in Indiana. The state capitol today was really a snapshot of American politics right now in the wake of so many mass shootings. We spent time with teachers from many public schools protesting for legislative changes to gun laws at the state capitol just behind me. Then meanwhile, right across the street, attendees at the National Rifle Association's annual gathering prepared to bolster gun rights by calling for gun rights to be protected here in Indiana and elsewhere, talking about the 14 acres of firearms that will be on display. There's not a lot of dialogue between these two sides, and there's a belief in both camps that there will be a period of inaction likely on gun legislation in the coming year because of the paralysis in Washington and the way this dynamic has played out time and time again.
And, it's interesting, there's been a lot of talk over the past year or 2 years about the decline in influence of the NRA, and yet you have really a who's who of actual and potential presidential contenders all speaking before the group.
And many of the NRA attendees we spoke with today said they still support former President Donald Trump. They believe he is on the path to win the Republican nomination. But there are many others here who are eyeing the race, maybe not already in the race, but certainly thinking about it, who are making their presence known. New Hampshire Governor Chris Sununu will be here. And earlier today, walked past and said hello to the South Dakota Governor, Kristi Noem. She is here, will make a speech. And you see in the Republican Party a belief that Trump might be on his way to the nomination, but whether it's for 2024 or for some time down the line, many of these ambitious Republicans in state houses, governor's mansions, in the U.S. Senate, U.S. House, they want to introduce themselves to this audience, a crucial audience inside the Republican Party.
Right. They all want to be the backup if he falters. Robert Costa in Indianapolis tonight, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that does it for today. You can stream Red and Blue Monday to Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern. You're streaming CBS News. Have a good one.
In today's Money Watch, business analyst Jill Schlesinger is here to help.
How do you even begin to make the best use of your money?
If you've got a match from your employer, don't give away that money.
Dollar Jill, y'all.
CBS Mornings, starting at 7.
An original